Let's start from the beginning, Mom.
Beginning of beginning.
The beginning of the beginning. I'd love for you to share.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. Yeah.
Open the storybook, Sheena.
Yeah. Let's share with us, what happened. How did you end up there?
Sure. So it really happened back in 2011. I think this was, and if we really look at it, if we're going to look at it from as far as time frame, it was probably a couple of years before that, around 2007, 2008, when sort of the unfolding of this began, right? This was a friend of mine whom I had a lot of respect for. She was a mortgage broker. Someone who, at the time when we first met, she was in a business that was very successful. She was a very giving person. So immediately the trust factor was there right from the beginning. At some point, I was looking to sell our home. Remember, we lived in a townhome at the time, and we were looking to move into something larger. And she was going to be helping us with that. So obviously, she had my information. She had my Social Security. We were going through the whole process. And we decided to kind of put all our trust in her. At the time, I was in a relationship. We were engaged.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And we began that process. And somehow, somewhere along the lines, she, having my information, having my Social Security, and all that private information, she took it upon herself, unbeknownst to me, to purchase quite a few homes in South Florida.
Oh, no.
She sure did. But I didn't know this, right? Because I had no clue.
I'm assuming, obviously, the homes were purchased under your name.
They were,
numbers.
and also under my business name.
Yeah.
So she went a little far into utilizing my business.
So when did you find out, or how did you find
So
out that
fast forward to 2011.
When did she buy the homes? That's where you were. You were talking.
We bought
about.
the home in 2008. This residential home, right? We had sold.
I remember you were so grateful to her.
Well, I was grateful to her because she was someone that I actually looked up to. She was an extremely giving person.
The irony.
This was a person. So I don't know if you remember, Jem, especially during that time, my office was very involved in charity.
I remember.
And this is the person that within minutes, I had a courier knocking on my door, bringing me a check, company check. She was donating. Whatever it was.
And this woman that it was responsible for this woman that we're talking about, let's call her Sarah. Okay. Or
can I call her Griselda? I mean, after all, that's what I called her.
Let's call her Ferdinand
So
Griselda.
the
ugliest name you could think of.
Right?
Okay, so let's call her Griselda.
Let's call her Griselda.
For anonymity's.
Well, that was the name I gave her in my book.
So Griselda, back to where you were in your story.
Well, I was very grateful to her because she facilitated the entire process very quickly. It was a very seamless process.
In the moment, and I would love, I know that you're being honest, but did you ever suspect that
Never.
that was a little weird?
Nope. At all. That was so. I'll share this with you, and I don't remember if I ever had this conversation with you.
Well, I was young when this all started. In 2008, I was 13, turning 14. So
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Yeah, there's a lot of details to this, right? The discovery of this was my then fiance and I. We needed to go to the bank. I had purchased, aside from the residential home, I also purchased a kind of, I guess, a vacation apartment of some sorts, right?
Yeah.
It was an investment opportunity that she brought to our attention, where we decided we would purchase 2 apartments in Sunny Isles. It's a great opportunity. At least it sounded like a great opportunity, right? At that time. Little did I know the things that came after that. And in doing so, about a year after we purchased this, she called me. She's like, listen, you're going to have to either short sale it. You're going to have to take it from here, right? During that time, she tells me this. I said, well, listen, when I went to the closing at the bank, I never got the closing statements. If I'm going to sell this, if I'm going to hire a realtor and we're going to do something with this property, I need the closing statements. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because of the trust level that I had in her.
Yeah, wow.
So I went to do the closing at the bank, at Regions Bank. To me, it was a real closing, right? I mean, I'm scheduled to, she calls me the day before. She's like, tomorrow you have to show up at Regions. You have a closing at 10 o'clock. Great. I go to Regions, ask for this person. I do that. I'm giving the closing statements. I sign away. I'm looking at the amount. to my knowledge, the amount that I was purchasing the apartment for was $170,000.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I saw there on
Right.
the closing statements, right? So there was no foul play at that point.
Right.
And I walk out. Well, no, let's backtrack. I say, aren't you going to give me the copies once we finish the closing? And the lady who attended me said, you know what? I need to make copies. I know you're in a rush. And truly, I was in a rush. I had to get back to my office. I had sessions throughout the day. She said, I'll give these to Griselda. I said, okay, no big deal. I'll get them from her at some point.
Yeah.
Some point never came. I did mention it to her. Say, hey, I didn't leave with the closing statement. She's like, oh, don't worry. Whenever I'll see you, I'll give them to you. Totally forgot about that. A year later, when she calls me, and at this point, she already knew what was happening. She already knew that she had been discovered. All the fraud that she had been committing. It's kind of like that. The hat was out of the, or how was the cat was out of the hat, right? Was out of the bag.
The hat was off the cat.
The hat and the cat in the bag.
So my then boyfriend, I said, listen, we need to go to the bank. We never got these closing statements. We have to go there. And when we arrived at the bank, we spoke to an officer there, sat us down.
An officer?
Well,
Like
a
a-
bank officer.
okay,
A bank
a ba-
officer,
okay.
right? Said, give me your information. We did. Next thing you know, the screen goes up. I see her typing my name, my social security, and next to my name, there's something that says fraud alert. Ooh. And I remember, I can still remember vividly looking at my name, reading fraud alert, and I'm like, what the hell? And I asked her, I said, what is that?
Yeah.
What? And she looks at me and she says, I'm sorry, you need to wait here. And so I tell my boyfriend, what the hell? I'm like,
Yeah.
look at this. So he's like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, I don't understand. Why would that, why would my name have that?
Did he work with her too or no?
So he also purchased an apartment. We bought two. I purchased
Got
one.
it, got it.
He purchased like one on the 25th floor.
So you guys didn't
purchased-
work together at all. You were just friends.
Who?
You and Griselda.
Griselda and I were friends. She was a mortgage broker, and this
Yeah.
was an investment opportunity that she brought to us.
So the
Right.
first time that you went to the bank, was that like an actor?
So no, it was actually an employee of the bank whom was also in cahoot with
her.
all of these mortgage frauds that were going on.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, we're talking about 300 loans.
I remember at the time of the case, I remember reading the newspaper, and it was the second biggest mortgage fraud case in
was.
history. You've been outdone. I'm sorry to let you know.
I have,
You're
I
no
have,
longer
I have.
top two. But at that time, it was.
Yes, it was. It was. So this officer brings someone else from the bank and says, "We're sorry. You need to." And they give us a business card for the mortgage task force,
Oh, God.
which at the time that was something that Obama put in place because there was so much fraud going on, especially in mortgages and the real estate market. And I'm like, no, somebody needs to explain to this, needs to explain this to me right now.
Yeah.
That was my response. Like, I'm not leaving here. They're like, I'm sorry. We recommend that you
Call
look
this person.
Well, call them and look for an attorney.
Shut up.
So now my boyfriend says, wait a minute. I also purchased the property with this mortgage broker. And
Look me up in
look
there.
me up. Right? Like, look me up. And yeah.
And
he
what?
also had the
Fraud alert?
fraud alert on his account.
So this is how you found out that something had gone down.
This is how I was like, what is going on here?
I mean,
And
did
I-
you run to her house? Sorry.
Yeah,
No, I mean, I called her many, many times.
You went to the bank because she didn't give you the closing statements.
Yes, I went to the bank.
What
because
was
she
her
had called-
excuse?
Well, she had called, not giving them to me.
Yeah, like when
She was a
when-
busy woman. I was a busy woman. I was running a very, very busy business.
So you were like, let me not bother her.
I just felt like she's got them. I've never been really
So
a paper
I'm saying
person.
like this second.
Oh Lord.
You know that.
Lesson one.
I don't hoard
Lesson
papers.
one in
Be a paper
business.
person.
Don't trust anybody.
Yeah. Well,
Have
so,
your own back with paperwork.
but when you were there the second time in the bank, it was to get your closing
I
statement
was there to get the copies for my closing statements.
Yeah.
I did not have them.
because you wanted to sell that apartment.
Yes, that was the
Okay.
idea.
Oh, she
Sell it,
told you
short
you
sale.
needed to.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'm like, but what do you mean? Can't talk right now. She was very, very short, very brief in her phone call. And so I obviously immediately tried to call her. Her phone was disconnected.
No.
Yeah, so I called her at home. Nothing. And then I called a friend of mine. I remember calling this friend of mine. She at the time worked for an attorney. I said, listen, this just happened. And she's like, oh, that was her response. Uh-oh. She's like, we can't help you with that. You need to find someone. And this is when I came across a real estate attorney whom I made an appointment to see. And I told him, listen, this is what's going on. He's like, well, let me look into this. I'll get back to you. Give me about a week. All right. Week goes by. I get a call. We were scheduled to come in. I remember walking into the conference room, and there was, I mean, from like left to right, imagine this large conference room.
Yeah.
It was like documents after documents after documents, just files after files after files. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of paperwork for just 2 properties, right? And he gives me a Post-it. He gives me like a stack of Post-it notes, and he gives it also to my ex. And he says, I need you to sit down, go through every single document. Wherever you see a signature that is not yours, I need you to put a Post-it note. And I was like, what? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Of course, because he had already gone through all the paperwork, and he noticed there was a huge disparity between
In the signatures?
in the signatures.
Right.
And immediately, John, I mean,
Your signature is pretty iconic. So like,
It is.
It's like the same
It's-
signature you've always had.
Well, please
And it's
don't
like
give
a
away any of the clues. We don't need this happening again.
well, and it's almost like a scribble, right?
It's
my
very
signature.
you. It's very
me.
unique
My personality.
to you. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like, I don't have time for this.
I
Let
don't
me
have
just.
time for this.
Okay, before you move on, because this is getting juicy.
It's very juicy.
I have one question. When was the moment that you started to have like a gut feeling that like, for example, if I was in my apartment for a year and my friend who helped me, texted me and was like, oh, you got to sell. I'd be like, bitch. I'd call up the phone and be like, hello. What
Well,
are you talking
we were
about?
speaking on the phone. This was a call. And I said to her, what do you mean? But what's going on? She's like, I can't talk right now. I can't speak. It's better if we speak in person. But there was no in person because she took off.
But anyway, so he tells you.
So we...
Put a Post-it note next
So
to
as
any
I'm
signature.
flipping through the pages, I'm like, what? It was such a neat signature. I knew that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like, this is so not me.
You're like, I'm a mess. This is not it. No.
Right? And I was like, wow, she didn't even try. There wasn't even an attempt in trying to mimic my
Right.
signature. That never happened. So it was really easy, obviously, to be able to find, and so at that moment, I remember him trying to explain, listen, I think there's been, this is much more than what we think it is. And at the time he said, I looked into this, and there's about 180 loans that have been purchased through this mortgage company.
All under your name or no?
No,
Oh,
no,
in
no.
general.
We didn't even know at that point how many. I know that there were several properties. He did mention that. And I remember fighting, literally like fighting with him, arguing with him.
You're
Because
like,
he
no, you're
said,
wrong.
She did this. And I said, no, you're absolutely wrong. I know her. I mean, I could have put my hand on fire.
So you're arguing with him, vouching for her.
So I'm vouching for her. I am arguing simultaneously with the attorney, with his assistant, and my then fiance. And I'm saying, absolutely not. You're crazy. You don't know her like I know her. I mean, I've known her for a number of years.
Yeah.
And I said, this is not her. This has to be someone in her office.
So you saw her as a victim too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I said, this has got to be someone in the office. I know this woman. I know her in an intimate setting, right? I knew her, I knew her children. I knew her daughters. I knew her. And to me, it was like, this is not, it's not possible.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't possible. So I left there very emotional. Again, trying to call her, making more attempts and trying to call her. Couldn't reach her. It was impossible to reach her. And so fast forward, the unfolding begins. And the unfolding begins in us now for a period of 4 years, civilly trying to prove. And actually, we went after Regions Bank. I was suing Regions for even allowing this to happen, right? And this all really happened. It took place because she had a very close friend who was the loan officer for all the mortgages at Regions. This is how she was able to get all of these loans approved.
Yeah, and
It was a
infiltrate.
whole operation.
It was a whole operation from the person who did the appraisals to the inspections to the loan officer, the closing agent. I mean, you name it, with the exception, and I will say that, with the exception of the title company.
Okay. So while you're going through the civil part of this, those 4 years, you never made contact with her?
I couldn't. My attorney
Forbade it?
Yeah. So we were able to actually prove, to kind of just bring it to that point, that all of my signatures were falsified.
Right.
We won that part in court. we were able to bring in a signature
civil court.
In civil court, a signature specialist, someone who obviously an expert. And I mean, we didn't really need one, but for the sake of the court, right? We wanted to make sure that we had this. And for me, it was like, okay, that's it. I mean, I got nothing else to do with this.
Right. It's
Right.
done.
You thought you were completely on the outside, that you just happened to be, like, oh, it'll get cleaned up. And I can't believe she did this.
But-
I'm sure you were devastated to find out, that your friend had done that and been in that position. But you never thought, or you can tell me if not, you never thought, oh, I'm in danger.
I never did, not once. I thought she's in danger.
Right.
And I actually felt for her. Like, I really did. And like, I truly, in my heart, I still didn't see her as a bad person.
Well, because I bet you saw yourself in her. A single mom, 2 little girls. So then how did that turn into what it ended up being?
I get a call.
How long
sometime
after?
Later. Not too long later.
Like
I
a
got a call
year?
from my civil attorney, and he's like, you're going to need to hire a federal attorney. What? That's the day, I don't know if you remember this, Jem, that you and your sister ran to the bathroom. I was vomiting.
Oh, I remember that day.
You girls were holding like my hair and my head.
I remember.
Because when he said you have to get a federal attorney, like he said, this is huge.
No, I distinctly remember that. I remember.
I was so sick to my stomach.
Well, this happened a couple of times. Like, I remember during that process, me watching you, and it was very hard. Oh, God, no.
Oh, cry, babe.
I'm trying.
Or cry, let it out. That's why we're here in our own world, full of tears.
After this all good, all this makeup I got on
Yo, guys, lean back. It's just really hot in here.
Yeah,
Everybody's
okay.
eyes are so...
Okay. I remember several times, like, don't look at me. Several times, not knowing really like what was going on, but just watching you, and you're so tough. Like, you're an ice queen, Mom. You know you're an ice queen. And watching you like get to those emotional levels of complete despair to the point that your body was reacting, and me being like, what the hell? I remember me and Amber crying with you, not having any idea what was going on, and just like, how do we help her? Well, I guess we hold her hair up.
Yeah, it was tough times.
Okay.
The unfolding of it, right, was the uprooting of so many things, because for me it felt, man, when I look back at that time, it was a time of just probably the most disruption I've ever had. And it was the kind of disruption, it wasn't like when I divorced your dad, right? Where, I mean, no, really, because, and this is important. I mean, listen, I was 23 years old.
Shout out to my dad.
I was 23 years old when I divorced your dad. And you
Wow,
were 4
baby.
and Amber was 11 months. And even then, I mean, it's not like that was just a walk in the park.
Yeah,
but
divorce is difficult.
But this was such a different scenario. This was almost, for me, freedom, as you know, and it's always been probably the most important thing a human can have is their freedom.
Yeah.
And I felt at that time like someone was trying to rip that from me, my freedom.
And everything
So
that
it
you
was
worked
scary.
so hard for.
I built the business from the ground up.
And
You
you
were-
didn't do anything.
At that time, I remember you had a radio show on Wednesdays with Y100, Hump Day Therapy.
With iHeart, with iHeart.
Shout out iHeart. You have great taste.
Hey, maybe it's time to bring it back.
I was filming for a reality show.
You were filming for a reality show. I just feel like you were like at the pinnacle of everything that you had worked so hard for at that moment.
Yeah.
When this all happened. So you're throwing up at the toilet.
There's vomit everywhere.
Pretty much. There's vomiting. There's, God, how can you do this? It was almost like a bad hangover without the alcohol, minus the
Oh,
alcohol.
yikes.
Right? I had several of those episodes. I mean, I was in fear. That's the truth. I was afraid. I was a single mom. And I had...
And I bet it's really even scarier to have felt like you overcame the situation. And you had probably that sense of peace and like that exhale, that it was
Yeah.
over, and then for it to turn its ugly head and come back for you is like,
Amplify.
I
It
can't
was like
even imagine.
Goliath is
Yes.
here. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. So he told you need to hire a federal attorney.
And I said, why? I mean, why? I thought this was over. No, it's just beginning. You need to hire. This is not my expertise. So he recommended someone, and I hired her, gave her $10,000 as a retainer. She wouldn't even put me in her appointment book. Remember that? She wouldn't have a conversation with me. I had to pay her $10,000.
I remember because I remember the moment where you were like, I don't have $10,000. Where am I going to get $10,000?
I did. It was in a CD.
Right.
That's where
But
I had
like
all
you
my
didn't have
savings,
it
all my money was
available,
in a CD.
like
Right.
liquidated.
Right.
Excuse me, liquidated.
It wasn't accessible for a, 20, like in 24 hours, I need this money.
Right.
So in a CD, you have to go through a whole process to get that money out of there. And I was able to, and I gave her the money, I retained her. And then I came in to speak to her. And that's when she said, well, let's see. So we're looking at probably a year in prison.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Like cut and dry,
so-
no nothing.
Just like that.
Yikes.
She had spoken already.
Nice bedside manner, $10,000 lawyer.
She had spoken already to the prosecutor. And she said, listen, this went to grand jury. Once it goes to grand jury, she said, you're going to get indicted. You're going to be indicted. I'm like, what is indicted?
You're like, does it come with tomato sauce?
Yeah. Do I get a free Coke with that? She said, you're going to get indicted. She explained what that looked like. I
So
said,
what is it? What does that mean?
well, it's when the FBI basically
Oh, no.
comes for you as if you were Pablo Escobar's girlfriend. In a nutshell.
Wow.
Right, in a nutshell.
So they look into your whole life.
Well, the indictment is, remember, this goes in front of a grand jury. They
Right. It's
have-
basically like they accuse you of a crime.
Right.
somewhat.
Yeah.
They feel that they have sufficient evidence, which they call discoveries. And based on these discoveries, they bring this to the grand jury. Grand jury says, let's do it. Let's indict them. And mind you, we were 20 being indicted. I was not the only pond in this fish. We're 20.
You mean fish in the pond?
Yeah.
I think you have a condition of metaphor reversal. First the cat and the hat.
This is why I'm so funny.
Now there's a pond and a fish. And I'm trying to, as you said that, I was trying to picture what it looked like, pulling a pond out of fish. All right.
Can we edit that?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so
I'm a lot more intellectual in this.
You're
you're
very,
very
intellectual.
intellectual. You just have a case of the switcher-uppers.
So you find out you're going to get indicted.
I get, yes. So I said,
And just so we can follow along the timeline, when was this? Do you remember what year?
Yes, of course. This was in 2011.
Okay.
2011. And I'm like, when is this going to happen? Where? She's like, I can't tell you that. I have no clue when and where.
What's going to happen?
The
The
indictment.
indictment.
Okay.
Like,
A couple of days later, I'm in my office. I'm working with a client. I step outside. I had to go to the restroom. When I come back in, I have 2 FBI agents standing in my front desk. And they were there. They wanted to question my employees. So I immediately called my attorney,
Right.
my newfound attorney. And she said, nope, tell your employees in front of them that they don't have to answer anything. They don't have representation. And you can tell them to leave.
okay.
So I did. I told them to leave. I was shaking. I remember right now as I'm sharing this with you, that moment. It's sort of like I have that picture, that image in my head of them walking in. They had a huge badge. It probably looked bigger because I was just so nervous.
No, but they look
Yeah.
intimidating on
It was
purpose.
so
too.
intimidating. And they're just this presence, right? Of like, I'm taking you away. Or at least I thought at the moment. I thought, oh shit, this is the indictment.
Yeah.
That thing my attorney told me about. And they did. They went away. And that's when a couple of days later, you and your sister had talked about, oh mom, there's no school the next day.
Well, hold on, because there's one part of this that I really remember. And it's that for weeks, we would see the car parked out of our apartment building.
Yes.
And she had told you that they would be
So-
listening into
yes.
everything, all of our phone calls, all of our
You're absolutely right.
conversations. And I remember like that looming presence of, I don't even know who it was in that white car. So yeah, I really remember, we've always been pretty spiritual people, and I like to consider myself a little bit of a bruja. But yeah,
Rouge.
I remember that the next day we had a sleepover at our house because the next day there was no school. Amber had a friend and I had 2 friends.
You had 2 friends.
And because I had 2 friends, I let them take my room and I slept on the couch. And I remember like it was yesterday. It's so crazy when you have these feelings and you don't know where they come from, that I woke up for no reason. At that time, I was not an early riser. I was not the morning person that I am today, babe. Sorry. And it was like, what, like 5:30 in the morning? And I remember, Mom, laying on that couch, and the couch shared a wall with your room. And I remember hearing you like rustle. Like I knew that you were either waking up or about to wake up. I didn't make a sound. You had no reason to be woken up by me. We were just awake at the same time. I don't know if it was a premonition or just something. And then like maybe 5 minutes later, the do 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 on the door. And I remember not knowing what to do in that moment and blocking the doorway. Like, I can't let them in. They're going to take my mom. And of course, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm 17. And, you know, I could probably get in a lot of trouble for doing that. But I was like, they can't come in. They can't take you. And you calm me down. And at that point, the entire house was awake. And Amber and her friends and my poor friends. Amber immediately breaking down. Them yelling at you to open the door, you opening the door, then like 5-6 agents coming to grab you as if you, I don't know, were dangerous or we had weapons in the house, like, and it was so fast.
Launching.